You're listening to the CyberWire Network, powered by N2K.
Our sponsor, Collide, has some big news. If you're an Okta user, they can get your entire fleet up to 100% compliance. How? If a device isn't compliant, the user can't log in to your cloud apps until they fix the problem. It's that simple. Without Collide, IT struggles to solve basic problems, like ensuring everyone's OS and browser are up to date. Unsecure devices log into your company's apps with no problems because there's nothing there to stop them. But Collide works seamlessly with Okta to enforce compliance as part of authentication and complete the Zero Trust security puzzle. Visit collide.com/CyberWire Daily to learn more or book a demo. That's KOLIDE.com/CyberWire Daily. Attacks against unpatched versions of Visual Studio and Win32K continue. Progress Software patches 2 MOVEit vulnerabilities. The Cyber Anarchy Squad claims to have taken down a Russian telecommunication provider's infrastructure. RomCom resumes its activity in the Russian interest. Deep into Psy from Zscaler describes Nevada ransomware. Our guest is Clark Rogers from Amazon Web Services with insights on what CISOs say to each other when no one else is listening. And the Mt. Gox hacking indictment has been unsealed. I'm Dave Bittner with your CyberWire Intel briefing for Monday, June 12, 2023. Threat actors continue to exploit a vulnerability in Microsoft's Visual Studio installer, the Register reports. According to researchers at Varonis, the flaw can allow an attacker to spoof an extension signature and effectively impersonate any publisher. Microsoft patched this vulnerability on April 11th. And according to researchers at Numen, other attackers are also exploiting a privilege escalation vulnerability affecting Win32K. Numen says that the vulnerability poses a major risk to systems older than Windows 11. Microsoft issued a patch for this flaw in May, and we note in full disclosure Microsoft is a CyberWire partner. In the continuing story of threats to MOVEit and the steps being taken to thwart them, MOVEit vendor Progress Software released an update to its file transfer software that patched the previously exposed and exploited CVE 2023-34632. Progress also disclosed and fixed a new, yet-to-be-exploited bug. The new vulnerability, which hasn't yet been assigned a CVE, was discovered during a proactive investigation conducted in coordination with cybersecurity firm Huntress. Progress advises users to update their software and explicitly urges users to only update their products through Progress's blog. The older MOVEit vulnerability continues to be exploited in instances whose users haven't yet applied the available fixes. On Friday, June 9th, the Minnesota Department of Education, the MDE, reported that one of its servers was compromised through exploitation of the earlier MOVEit vulnerability, CVE 2023-34362, which the MDE had not yet patched. MDE explained that 24 files had been accessed, which compromised approximately 95,000 names of students placed in foster care throughout the state, as well as students qualifying for the Pandemic Electronic Benefits Transfer and students in particular college classes and bus routes. No financial information was exposed. MDE recommends that affected individuals should monitor their credit reports and take steps to protect their identity. The 74 reported that ransomware gang Medusa has claimed responsibility for the breach and is demanding $1 million in ransom. The outlet says that a preliminary review of the gang's dark web leak site by the 74 suggests The compromised files include a significant volume of sensitive documents, including information related to student sexual violence allegations, finances, and student discipline, among others. And over in the UK, the regulatory body Ofcom this morning disclosed that it too had been affected by exploitation of this vulnerability. Ofcom said, "A limited amount of information about certain employees we regulate, some of it confidential, along with personal data of 412 Ofcom employees was downloaded during the attack. Investigation and remediation are in progress." If you're a MOVEit user, do consult Progress Software's blog. The Cyber Anarchy Squad, which represents itself as a hacktivist organization dedicated to supporting Ukraine and defending itself against Russia, claimed to have successfully hit the Russian telecommunications provider Infotel JSC last Thursday evening. Infotel JSC confirmed that its systems had indeed come under attack, BleepingComputer reports, saying that restoration work is currently underway. Additional deadlines for completing the work will be announced. We hope for your understanding and further cooperation. For its part, the Cyber Anarchy Squad crowed about their destruction of Infotel JSC's infrastructure, the record reports. Infotel JSC has a number of clients in the financial sector, including Russia's central bank. Connectivity between the central bank and other financial service and e-commerce businesses depends to a significant extent on the telco's infrastructure, and the Cyber Anarchy Squad claims that its attack has rendered it difficult and in some cases impossible for banks to conduct routine transactions. The attack coincided with the opening of Ukraine's counteroffensive and, according to Security Affairs, included website defacements celebrating Ukraine's attack. There are no obvious indications, however, that the cyber attack was a closely coordinated combat support operation. It seems rather to have been malevolent exuberance directed towards Russia. BlackBerry researchers find that the operators of the RomCom remote access Trojan have recently stepped up their activity against Ukrainian politicians, among other targets. The particular politicians targeted are working closely with Western governments and at least one U.S. organization involved in delivering relief to Ukrainian refugees, with a goal of information collection. BlackBerry writes that the threat actor behind the RomCom rat appears to be actively interested in what Western countries are doing to support Ukraine, what Ukraine is doing, and who the refugees are receiving help from in the United States. And finally, 2 Russian nationals were charged with the 2014 hack of the Mt. Gox cryptocurrency exchange, described by Coinbase as one of the biggest cryptocurrency heists in crypto history. An indictment from 2019 was unsealed last Friday, detailing how the 2 hackers stole upwards of 647,000 bitcoins from the exchange between 2011 and 2017. Once the funds were lifted, they were then laundered. Both alleged conspirators are being charged with conspiracy to commit money laundering, while one of them also faces a charge for operating an unlicensed money services business. And here in America, they're regarded as innocent until proven guilty, so they got that going for them. Coming up after the break, Deepan Desai of Zscaler describes Nevada ransomware. Our guest is Clark Rogers from Amazon Web Services with insights on what CISOs say to each other when no one else is listening. Stay with us. And now, a word from our sponsor, SpyCloud, the cybercrime analytics leader. SpyCloud disrupts cybercrime by telling you what criminals know about your business and your customers, so you can take action to prevent ransomware, account takeover, and online fraud. SpyCloud constantly recaptures and analyzes new data from the criminal underground, including credentials, cookies, and PII siphoned from malware-infected devices. With knowledge of the specific data criminals have in hand from InfoStealer malware on managed and unmanaged devices, security teams can respond with a more efficient and effective process called post-infection remediation. Get SpyCloud's post-infection remediation guide outlining the 7 steps for preventing a malware infection from becoming a full-blown ransomware incident. Visit spycloud.com/cyberwire. That's spycloud.com/cyberwire. And we thank SpyCloud for sponsoring our show. And now, a word from our sponsor, Mimecast. You're wondering if you need more email and collaboration security. Because, as it turns out, just protecting your workspace with M365 isn't good enough. You just watched your entire company grind to a screeching halt, all because someone opened a phishing email. Next time, don't rely on one-size-fits-all security. Protect your inbox with Mimecast and diversify your security stack. For a free trial, go to mimecast.com and keep your business from, falling apart. The AWS Reinforce Conference is taking place this week in Anaheim, California, and the CyberWire is happy to be a media partner for the event. In anticipation of the conference, I spoke with Clark Rogers, enterprise security strategist at Amazon Web Services, about a series of special events they host for CISOs, a gathering they call CISO Circles.
The CISO role has evolved over the years. My background, I'm a former CISO myself in the insurance and financial services industries, and have been at AWS now for about 6.5 years, and have had the opportunity to meet with over 750 customers, a large percentage of those being CISOs. And as I've seen the CISO role evolve over the years, it used to be the sort of firefighter security professional, right? So something bad happens, here's the security person who's going to go take care of it, right? There wasn't a lot of strategy behind it. There wasn't much programmatic thought around the security and compliance role at an organization. It's just, we needed that function. And over the years, I'm very happy to say that the CISO role has transitioned into a business leader, right? Where security is viewed not as a have to have, but a must have as far as enabling the business to go faster, take more risks, really leaning into security as a strategic advantage. So as that role has evolved, the education around security tooling and best practices and, the top 10 lists of what you should and should not do as a security professional, those are all still important. But more often than not, those are taken care of by security engineering teams or security operations center, whatever the case may be in the particular organization. And then the CISO, that role is really doing a few things. The CISO is translating the business needs to the security and development community. Here's the outcomes that we need to have. The CISO is reporting up, right? So reporting to the board and saying, well, here's the risks that face the business. Here's the mitigants that I have in place. Here's the mitigants that we need to put in place, right? To actually keep pace with what the business is trying to do. And then it's navigating and really much more of a business leader in the sense of the social cohesion around building that strong security culture throughout the organization. And that's where we see CISOs really focusing on these days, in addition to their traditional sort of protection duties.
Now, you and your colleagues at AWS have taken a role in hosting some events for CISOs to try to facilitate some of these conversations. Can you describe that for us?
Certainly. The program itself is called the CISO Circles, or the AWS CISO Circles. And we started them around November of 2020. That was prime pandemic time. So we wanted to make sure that we were developing a curriculum and a reason and building the community for CISOs to sort of get together and quote unquote talk shop, right? So not so much the bits and the bytes, but more of what I was talking earlier, right? How do I get how do I build a strong security culture within my organization? How do I make sure executives care about it? What are some best practices on X, Y, and Z? So we developed these, and it's a global program today, broken down by region. And we'll typically have anywhere between 10 and 25 customer CISOs under NDA and Chatham House rule to speak freely about their security programs and to engage with one another around what works, what doesn't, what some of the problems are that are facing them these days, and ideally some solutions. And we're really there to facilitate the conversation. It's a what I'll call a sort of no-sell zone, right? So even though it's an AWS event, we don't have third-party sponsor it, so you don't have to listen to a spiel about the latest security tool from vendor X. We don't typically talk about AWS services unless it aligns with a topic that the CISOs actually want to talk about. So if it's if they want to discuss, what are some best practices in logging, for example, we'll make sure that we have an expert to facilitate a discussion around that, from an AWS perspective. Those types of topics tend to come up more often than not.
You're deliberate about making this a safe space for them to have these types of conversations. I'm curious what sort of things come up when it comes to the challenges of the job itself.
As I mentioned earlier, these are all under NDA, and they're also under Chatham House rule, which basically says you can learn from each other. You just can't attribute what someone said during the session, right? So with those rules in place, the CISOs feel very comfortable to say, I tried either product or process X. It didn't work, right? Or I'm having struggles, or I'm struggling with trying to get developers on board to care about security. Does anybody have any tips on how to do this? There's no way without that sort of safe space would any CISO go in public and say something like that. This is their peer group. We purposely mix these up by industry, right? So it's not, you're not going to have a room of financial services professionals together. You'll have a mix of maybe financial services, media and entertainment, retail, technology. They'll all be in the room together. And despite their industry differences, we find that they all typically have the same challenges and opportunities within their organization, right? So it's around security education, it's staffing. Where am I going to find that next, or where am I going to train that next great security professional for my team? What are some of you all doing to make sure that you're growing your security teams and growing the security influence throughout the organization? How are you aligning security outcomes with business outcomes? How do you budget? Again, what are some best tips for reporting to the board? One example from a CISO circle we had last year that sort of sticks with me is one of the CISOs recommended that he looked up who was part of his board and then found out what other boards they were on. He then reached out to the CISO at that other company, which actually happened to be a competitor, and they had a long discussion around how to best present security information to that particular board member. And when you have someone say something like that, you sort of look around the room and you see these other CISOs, writing down feverishly that, hey, that's a great idea. That's not something I thought about before. So it's really great to really be able to facilitate these discussions. And we just sort of really stand back and just sort of make sure, that the venue is there. We'll MC it and make sure that the topics that are covered to the degree that the CISOs want. And then we also do follow-ups with them to say, what are you interested in? What's top of mind? And, what can we bring to the next CISO circle?
That's Clark Rogers from Amazon Web Services. The AWS Reinforce Conference is taking place this week in Anaheim, California. And joining me once again is Deepan Desai. He is the Global CISO and Head of Security Research and Operations at Zscaler. Deepan, it is always a pleasure to welcome you back to the show. I want to talk to you today about Nevada ransomware. I know this is something you and your colleagues there at Zscaler have had an eye on. What do we need to know about this?
Yeah, thank you, Dave. So Zscaler Threat Labs tracks various ransomware families, and the goal over there is to make sure we add detection intelligence into our platform, protect our customers, and then also help the community where we collaborate with CERTs, ISACs, agencies in order to make sure we do our part in fighting against these ransomware groups. So, as part of that tracking operation, we came across a new variant of Nokoyawa ransomware family. And this is not the first variant. We have seen a couple others in the past. So one called Karma, and then another called Nemty ransomware. These are all variants of Nokoyawa. The original version of Nokoyawa ransomware was introduced just almost a year back. Yeah, it was in Feb 2022, and it was written in C programming language. They were using file encryption ciphers like elliptical curve cryptography with curve sect 233R1, right? And then the most recent variant that I'm about to talk is Nevada ransomware, which was observed in December of 2022. And a unique part over here is it was advertised in criminal forums as part of a new ransomware as a service affiliate program.
And what sets it apart from any of the previous versions here?
So this specific variant is written in Rust programming language with support for Linux and also 64-bit versions of Windows. It does have significant code similarities, though, with Nokoyawa ransomware, including things like debug strings, command line arguments, even the encryption algorithm is similar, but it's written in entirely new language. And then, as I mentioned, this is also being offered as ransomware as a service affiliate program, which means all the grunt work is already done, right? And you could just subscribe to it, and then you have payload and infrastructure ready to target your victim. The group behind this, though, the Nokoyawa ransomware group, what we're seeing is there are almost two parallel code branches, and each of them written in different programming languages, potentially to confuse researchers, evade detection, and then also maybe they are taking a look at which one is turning out to be more successful in some of these campaigns and attacks that they're launching in the wild.
What are you tracking in terms of proliferation here? How popular is this?
This one is not very prevalent. I mean, there are many other ransomware groups out there like Clop, Blackbuster. I mean, those are much more prevalent than this one. But this is yet another group which we saw come to the scene in December. Has some unique things that we talk about, and it's something to keep an eye out for future developments as well.
And in terms of preventing yourself from falling victim to this, I suppose the usual rules apply here.
Yes, the usual rules apply. You have to be cautious about clicking on those links that arrive. Things like Office document. More recently, we're seeing a lot of OneNote documents being leveraged by quackbots, emotet groups. That's the stage one of many of the ransomware attacks that you see out there. And they start with crackbot. They will then have post-exploitation tools downloaded, which will then lead to these ransomware families being planted on the victim organization. Another concerning trend we're seeing in the ransomware threat landscape is many of these groups, and when I say many, we know at least 4 to 5 of them, where they're not encrypting the files on the victim's machine. What they're doing is they will exfiltrate tons and tons of data. And I'm talking about terabytes of data in many of the victims that we were tracking. And they will literally work with the victim that, hey, we don't want you guys to be in the public news, and we don't our group to be in the public news either. It's a bad situation for both of us. So pay the ransom. We have all the data. We didn't bring down your infrastructure so that you don't get any kind of negative press, any kind of attention. So they're all trying to stay under the radar. And that's definitely concerning, because now you will not know how many actually attacks are also happening out there. And so this basically makes that whole notion of making sure you have consistent security policy, the zero trust architecture implementation, making sure anything that leaves your environment goes through an inline DLP solution with SL inspection. Very, very important, because once they have your data, they're going to demand ransom.
All right, well, word to the wise. Deepan Desai, thank you for joining us. Tired of cybersecurity mega conferences? MWise is different. With a focused agenda and targeted problem solving, MWise is where security's best go to get better. From September 18th through the 20th in Washington, D.C., you'll join a special community of security's sharpest minds, hear perspectives you might not get anywhere else, and reach a new level of mastery that'll prepare you for what's next. Register early and save at mwise.mandiant.com/conf23. That's mwise.mandiant.com/CONF23. And that's the CyberWire. For links to all of today's stories, check out our daily briefing at thecyberwire.com. Don't forget to check out the Grumpy Old Geeks podcast. I join Jason and Brian on their show for a lively discussion of the latest security news every week. You can find Grumpy Old Geeks where all the fine podcasts are listed. We'd love to know what you think of this podcast. You can email us at cyberwire@n2k.com. Your feedback helps us ensure we're delivering the information and insights that help keep you a step ahead in the rapidly changing world of cybersecurity. We're privileged that N2K and podcasts like the CyberWire are part of the daily intelligence routine of many of the most influential leaders and operators in the public and private sector, as well as the critical security teams supporting the Fortune 500 and many of the world's preeminent intelligence and law enforcement agencies. N2K Strategic Workforce Intelligence optimizes the value of your biggest investment, your people. We make you smarter about your team while making your team smarter. Learn more at n2k.com. This episode was produced by Liz Irvin and senior producer Jennifer Iben. Our mixer is Trey Hester, with original music by Elliot Peltzman. The show was written by Rachel Gelfand. Our executive editor is Peter Kilpie, and I'm Dave Bittner. Thanks for listening. We'll see you back here tomorrow. CrowdSec's CTI distributes IP reputation intelligence, allowing SOC teams and security analysts to obtain highly curated data on intrusion attempts, origins, and trends. Sourced from a large network of real users from all over the world, operating a large variety of services and apps, CrowdSec's CTI provides actionable data and clear insight into cyber threats, allowing for a faster response as well as resource development and allocation. Find out more at crowdsec.net. Hello, listeners. We're always looking for ways to improve the CyberWire network to give you an intelligence-driven news experience that saves you time and keeps you in the know on the latest developments in cybersecurity. We'd like to hear your feedback in our 2023 audience survey. Complete this survey for a chance to win a $100 Amazon gift card. Visit thecyberwire.com/survey. That's thecyberwire.com/survey and share your feedback. Thanks.